So welcome everyone. My name is Eric Pennington with the Spirit of EQ, and joining me as co-host tonight is Jeff East with the Spirit of EQ. We are extremely excited about being with you all tonight. What we're going to be doing is we're going to go on a bit of a journey together. And in this journey, there are many different things that you're going to hear, and potentially some of it might be familiar, some of it might be kind of strange in a sense. But I want to stress to you that when we do any type of session, we want to make sure that everyone understands that this is a psychologically safe environment. And we understand that everybody comes to that with different perspectives, but for us, it means it gives you, the learner, a feeling of, hey, this is a place where I can learn, I can be authentic, I can share if I want, or if I don't want to share, it's cool, because that's the best type of environment for learning, for the kind of work that we're going to do. Because we're going to be looking at emotions and the idea of emotional intelligence. There's going to be some breakout rooms, things where you can learn from one another. And Jeff's going to hold me accountable. We got to make sure we have a little bit of fun as we go through this journey.
Nothing's more important.
Well, Jeff and I have scars for the times that we did sessions that were not fun. And I know you remember those, Jeff.
Yes.
So go ahead.
The other thing is, and unless you covered this in your intro, because I was trying to get something pulled up, is approach what we're doing with curiosity. We always tell people that if something piques your interest, you can type it into the chat box, you can write it down and contact us later. But if there's something that you're curious about, go with that. That means something has triggered something, and you probably want to learn more from that.
Well, that's a great point, Jeff. And I also will tell you, everyone, that there will be some things that might make you a little uncomfortable. Just don't feel like you have to figure it all out tonight. Don't feel like it's a time for judgment. Just be curious to want to learn more about it. Because again, that is a pathway for learning. Judgment is typically a way of shutting down the opportunity to learn. And that means from yourself as well as with others. So with that, I'm going to get started by sharing my screen, and we will begin. So hopefully you can see my wonderful photo of Mount Rainier in this beautiful state of Washington. That photo actually, guys, was taken by a friend of mine, and he is a wonderful, wonderful photographer. And I'm fortunate I get to grace it on my wallpaper. So as we begin tonight, as I mentioned, this is, quite frankly, a journey. And with that, there's going to be different things we're going to encounter along the way. And it's specifically designed to help you understand more about emotional intelligence. The reality is that everyone has EQ. It's just a matter of how high it is and how well you manage it that determines what it's producing and what it's manifesting to the world. I love emotional intelligence from the perspective that it is a learnable skill. So virtually anyone can grow their emotional intelligence. It's not like IQ, where pretty much your IQ is your IQ. It's just emotional intelligence has facets to it and competencies that if you work on them, you can really grow. Now, there's really only one type of people that it won't work for, and that's for people who don't want to work on themselves. So if someone is saying, I don't want to work on me, well, this will probably be a colossal waste of time for them. With that said, a little bit of an icebreaker as we get going here. And you guys can type in the chat. Jeff, if you could do me that wonderful favor of kind of monitoring. What's one of your favorite movies and why? And I'll give you guys a few minutes to type that in. And hopefully as you look at the chat, you can see some things that maybe will surprise you. Maybe it'll be some things you find in common as well. And then Jeff, as you start to see those flow through, go ahead and just read off.
Creed. Marley and Me. I'm a sucker for doggos. Benchwarmers. Steel Magnolia. It's a good cry fest. The Imaginary. Okay, you're going too fast. The Imaginary of Dr. Horn something or other. Adventures at Baron von Munchausen. Inception. Wedding Crashers. Princess Bride. Great soundtrack by Mark Knopfler too. Step Brothers. The Great Gatsby. 1917. Fight Club. Dances with Wolves.
Nice.
Idiocracy.
Okay. Well, for the person who said Inception, I'm in your tribe. That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Another vote for Princess Bride, Guardians of the Galaxy, Tombstone, Shawshank Redemption, filmed right here in Ohio.
Yeah.
Old Ohio Penitentiary, or Old Manfield Penitentiary, Pretty Woman. What are movies I have a 15-month-year-old? Well, you're not watching, I don't know what it is for kids anymore. Days of Thunder.
I remember that one. Princess Bride is a great one for me too, because that was the movie that my wife and I on our first date many moons ago. But yeah, awesome.
And,
okay, great.
Well, being curious, Princess Bride was a movie I did not want to watch.
Oh,
until I did, and now it's in my top 10. So
no doubt.
Be curious.
All right, so the EQ journey. Here's something that is, at least in our culture in the United States, it's an issue. And the issue around it is that not a lot of people really know what emotions are. So what we want to do as we get started and moving is to help us kind of level set the idea and the definition around what are emotions. In the United States, as an example, I find it curious that we tend to butcher the meaning and the depth of certain things, and emotions are like that. You might be surprised when I tell you that emotions are chemicals in your brain. That's what they are. Science proves that, establishes that. It's chemicals in your brain. And by that, they, in many ways, are communicators, kind of like neurotransmitters for us as we go through our days, our weeks, or months and years. If you think about it, when you experience an emotion, whether it be anger or joy or sadness, disgust, frustration, enthusiasm, apprehension, you fill in the blank. There's something that happens inside of us, right? So let's imagine for a minute that we all are on a road trip together. 36, 38, maybe 50 cars of us, and we're all heading in the same direction on a freeway system. And would you believe we all get cut off on the freeway almost at the same time? There's a process that's going to occur in all of us as human beings. First, there's going to be a thought. Maybe it's, oh my gosh, we almost got in an accident. Oh my gosh, that could be dangerous. And then there's going to be an emotion. You might feel anger. What a jerk. How in the world could that person do that? Some of you might feel empathy. You might think, oh, I hope they're okay. I hope they didn't have a seizure or maybe a heart attack. And then we're going to do something. If I'm angry, I might think, you know what? I'm going to follow that person and I'm going to show them, you know what? If you're an empathetic, if you felt the empathy, you might think, and you might do, I should say, well, maybe I should call 911 and see if they can get a squad along with the police to help that person. But for every one of us that has that process, that's repeated every single day of our lives. So ultimately, the better we can get at understanding what our emotions are telling us, and the better we can get at kind of managing that process, we're going to have better results. Because you would tell me, if I go chasing after a car that cut me off, that could cause some really big problems, because I don't know who this person is. Maybe they've got a gun. Maybe they're looking for a fight. However, the person has that empathy, they may make the right decision, because maybe they did have a seizure. Maybe they did have a heart attack. Maybe there is something that they need help with. Better decision-making leads to better results. And please remember this, guys. We hope you'll remember a ton from our session, but one of the biggest things, the better our decision, the better we're going to get results in our families and our friendships and our work and school. And we know this. I mean, it's just kind of innate, isn't it? So that's a little bit about emotions that I wanted to kind of throw out to you, just to kind of get the definition and the understanding of what they are. There are really not any bad emotions. There are really not any negative ones and positive ones to stay away from, ones to embrace. It really is a process of understanding. And if we can get to this place of emotions are our ally and not our enemy, man, we get really, that's a lot of fuel to help us as we go through this process we call life, and all the facets that come with it. So with that, let's take a look at some emotions and some basic messages that those emotions might be saying to you and I, again, on a daily basis. Anger. This is a typical one. I'll stress to you guys, this is not exhaustive. You may have a different experience with anger. It may have sent you a different message, but for the purposes of tonight, we'll just look at it as a high level. So anger, basic message from that is, what's in the way? What's blocking me? What's stopping me? Joy, what do you want to maintain? Maybe there's something really, really valuable, something very, very important to you that you just want to hold on to. Trust, what do you want to embrace? Fear, it's a big one. What is at risk? Now, you'll hear messaging in our culture that says fear is really, it's a bad thing. We can't be. Well, I'd like you to think about it from that curiosity perspective again, and maybe just ask, why am I afraid? What is behind this fear? You might discover there's a good message for you and your benefit. Surprise, what is unexpected? Sadness, what that you love are you losing? Disgust, what rules are broken? This particular image here is, as you all know, an iceberg. Would anyone like to guess what, if we could say percentage of an iceberg is visible to the human eye? You feel free to type in the chat if you have some ideas around that. Just guesses would be fine. What percentage would you say of an iceberg is typically visible to the eye versus the unseen? And once again, Jeff, I'll ask you if you can read off.
We're seeing between 10 or 5 and 20%, 12%, 7%, 18, 15. So they're all in that not that much category above the water.
Exactly. And that's as it is for us as human beings. When you met me for the first time tonight, right? You get to see a bit of me. You can listen to my voice. You can read maybe my body language a bit, whether I'm smiling, I'm frowning. But that's only a small percentage of me, because there's a lot that happened today and last week that is underneath the surface. But if I'm smiling and I'm optimistic, and you can say, boy, that guy seems really engaged, very well is happening underneath the surface that's driving that. And the same would go, because guys, as optimistic as I am, I got bad days too. Maybe if this was a bad day, maybe I'm not as energetic. Or maybe if my mood gives me a call next week to just say, hey, I wanted to thank you for the session. And I say, well, Mahmood, I really can't talk right now. Can I call you back maybe tomorrow? There's something driving that, right? So that's what it's about with our emotions.
Can I add something to this? I don't know how many times, we've seen this illustration. I just noticed something about it. That part of the iceberg above the water is very bland. It's just kind of wide. And that part under the water has a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Jeff.
I'm done now.
No, I appreciate that. Well, and think about it, everybody. That dynamic it's not a bad thing. What causes that to be a bad thing is when we ignore it and we choose not to work on it. That's when it becomes bad, because it creates these hidden areas that are, have you ever said this? Have you ever heard someone say this to you? I don't know why I always get so, I don't know why I lose my, I don't know why that person makes me feel. More than likely, it's what's been happening underneath the surface that hasn't been managed, hasn't been looked at. No curiosity. All right, so I'm going to turn this to Jeff. Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about what EQ is not?
Okay. EQ is just not being nice to people. You could put on the happy face and go about your life being nice. But is that really what you're feeling? Is that really what's going on in your life? Where being emotionally intelligent is you're reacting or responding to the situation you're in. If you need to approach something with some aggression because maybe something made you angry and you need to address that, being nice might not be what you want to do. So you might need to not be nice in a certain way to accomplish something if somebody is hurting someone else, as an example. Being emotional, that's a hard one to try to say that it's not, because yes, we all have emotions, but I think being emotional is we're letting those emotions rule us without understanding them, without using them for the purpose that they're in us for, without using them to grow. You're being emotional, you're showing these emotionals, and usually when you think of being emotional, it's being angry or crying or being really, really sad or something like that, over the top happy. That's not what we're talking about as far as emotional. We're talking about understanding the emotions. Personality. Once again, you can put on a personality that's not you, but by tapping into the EQ, you're learning what really is going on around you. That's going to affect how you interact with people. It's just not, once again, trying to be nice and getting along. It's actually being who you are after you discovered that. And then the opposite of IQ, I think Eric said that, but I'll reemphasize it. Your IQ is pretty much as smart as you're going to be. IQ is there for the logic part, solving concrete things. Whatever work you're in, you're using your IQ. You're using your IQ to better yourself as far as knowing things. EQ is different. One, your IQ is pretty much set. EQ is very, very learnable, and it's also very, very variable. If you would take one of our assessments on a day that everything has been perfectly fine for you, it's going to score differently than if you take one of our assessments on a day that nothing has went right, because it's variable. And also the most important part about it is you can learn EQ skills.
One of the things I want to throw out, Jeff, as well as I get to the definition that we use, and that is that as variable as EQ can be in the sense of what circumstances you may be encountering, EQ is very much like a muscle. And those of you who have knowledge of exercise know that if you lift weights of some variety, you will build muscle. If you choose not to do anything, those muscles that you build can go to atrophy and you'll lose muscle. Same as it is here, because the idea is that we want to be doing everything we can, not just for a session, not just for a month, but in our daily lives, of always exercising the muscle of EQ so that when you hit a headwind, you're better equipped. It's not about being perfect or having the best scores or whatever, but it is about strengthening. So with that, the definition of EQ, Jeff, is
emotional challenges. It's you're blending thinking and feeling. You're taking what you're feeling, which is the emotions, taking that from examining that feeling, doing the things that Eric mentioned before. You know, what is this telling me? What is around me that might be causing this emotion to tell me something? And then with that, you can blend it with your thinking, the harder facts, and then that lets you make optimal decisions. Or another way that I like to, when I'm talking with people about this, is you learn to respond rather than react. You know, a reaction just happens. You know, if you pour two chemicals together that don't like each other, you're going to get this reaction. But if you want a certain compound, you take other things together so that you get the response or the product that you want. And as you learn more about EQ, you'll find that by learning how to respond, you know, putting that thinking and feeling together, your decisions will be better. Whether it's a decision about a relationship, if it's a decision about buying a car or changing jobs, you'll find that those decisions will fit better into what you want for your life.
It's interesting, as Jeff mentions, that Daniel Goldman, who in many circles, he's considered to be the guru, if not godfather, of emotional intelligence. His process that he's described in many settings is that when an emotion comes, you're releasing all of these different chemicals, hormones, and peptides. It's very important for all of us to find some kind of practice to calm ourselves in that very early stage. And quite frankly, it's about 6 to 10 seconds. If we can find that tool to calm ourselves, it allows our prefrontal part of our brain, the executive function, to kick in. So once again, you get angry and you just react, you're probably not going to make the most optimal decision. If you can give yourself that 6 seconds, whether that's prayer, meditation, breathing, whatever it may be, and allowing that prefrontal to catch up, it positions you to make that optimal decision. And this can be applied to relationships, to the choice of what you're going to do in a project at work or at school. All of these things are there at your disposal. So when we look at where we're at now, sort of, and I'll just be totally transparent about, I really thought I would be in a place where I wouldn't say in a pandemic era. And, you know, it looks pretty good from what I'm understanding. However, I think we've been in a state of change, constant change, for almost 2 years now. So just real quickly, because I'm going to be respectful for your time, if you want to type in the chat, what are some of the changes that you've seen, and you can choose good or bad, in the world in which you live, whether it's impacted directly by the pandemic or some other thing, but think of it in light of the last 2 years. What are some of the changes that you've seen? And then Jeff, once again, as you see those come through if you can
Okay.
read out.
Layoffs at work.
Mhm.
That's affected a lot of people.
Yeah.
Work where I live, friends and family, the decline in the community. People doing Zoom meetings, full-time remote, supply chain problems, lack of personal conversations. Somebody got divorced and said, thank God. Supply chain, labor shortages,
Yeah.
less personal interaction, lack of goods at the store, unreliable employees, seeing family less,
Yeah.
face-to-face interactions, hybrid working. There's more anger, my family interactions, community polarization, that's a big one.
Yeah. So what I'm going to say to you guys is those are big. And a lot more of what was read off there from Jeff were things that weren't so good. Emotional intelligence, if you're working on it and you're growing it, it'll help you navigate change so much better. And I kind of liken it to building up that muscle to the place of where you can kind of live transcendently, right, above the circumstances. I'd love to tell you that we're going to be finished with change as soon as 2022 comes. But even without a pandemic, we all know there's more change to come, as it in many ways always has been. It's just been so rapid here in the last two. So I liken it to, let's equip ourselves to be ready to navigate more change. And that's what emotional intelligence will help you with.
You know, I'm looking at this old map that you used, and a lot of the old maps used to have on the edge of them, beyond here, there be dragons. So you don't know what this next dragon is going to be.
And I'm just saying that just, you know, I'm the kind of person, and, you know, it doesn't mean you have to think of it this way, is that if I'm here and I've got breath in my lungs, it means I'm here for a reason. So I want to be as prepared as I can, even if it doesn't go my way, to be able to manage and navigate, as Jeff said, those dragons or the change. So I'm going to shift a bit, and I'm going to share with you a fairly short video about the practice of emotional intelligence, or EQ. There's some really good tips here. What I would recommend as you're going through this session and the session tomorrow, think about maybe one or two things that you hear or that you see that you could really run with, so that you can find some traction for what you're seeing and hearing. So let's take a look.
There's fascinating science about practice, and there's so many myths. Myths about how we practice, how we get better, what practice does. And in this video, we're going to look at practicing emotional intelligence and how the right kind of practice in the moments and days and eras of our lifetime can help us actually get better to get the results we want. What does it mean to practice emotional intelligence? At 6 seconds, we have a vision of 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. So what does it mean to practice, and what is emotional intelligence? Well, to start with, emotional intelligence is about being smarter with feelings. We all have feelings. They affect us. They affect us physiologically. They affect our brains. They affect every living cell in our body. So these emotions are there. We can be dumb and just let it happen as it happens, or we can be smarter with our feelings and be intentional and pay attention. It's like a pair of glasses, and everything that we perceive, every thought that we have, every behavior is filtered through this emotional lens. And so when we talk about practicing emotional intelligence, how do you pay attention to this moment in your life, to this day in your life, or your whole life, and make sure that you're showing up on purpose? When we talk about practicing emotional intelligence, we're bringing it into the day-to-day, the moment-to-moment, and we're using our bigger plan to make sure that those moments add up to something. On a moment-to-moment basis, when we practice emotional intelligence, It starts by noticing and saying, whoa, something is happening here. I'm feeling something. I'm reacting in a particular way. And I've set myself on a path. And it's just about stopping and say, this is the path I want to be on. I'm in the middle of a conversation. I'm washing dishes. I'm writing an email. I'm arguing with my teenager. Whatever it is you're doing in that moment, you stop and say, wait, is this how I want to be going? Is this the path that I want to be on? And emotion gives you a clue. When you feel something physically, you feel something emotionally, you notice these clues. And you say, oh, hold on, that's a clue. Let me pay attention to it. That's the first step in practicing. And then you consider, what options do I have? And then what do you really want? And you might continue on the same path, or you might try something. Now, in daily practice, we're doing much the same, but we're planning a little bit in advance. We're saying, today, I want to listen better. Today, I want to connect better. Today, I want to influence people more effectively by stepping into the role of coach. Whatever it is you want to practice today in terms of your relationships with yourself, your relationships with others, set a goal and say, what can I practice to help me do that? And again, the same three questions that I asked. What feelings and reactions will help you with that? What options can you choose rather than being on autopilot to be intentional? And what do you really want? And by setting this plan for practice in advance for today or for this week, it's going to let you use your emotional intelligence more intentionally. And then we zoom out further to your whole life. And you say, well, thinking about my life, what do I want these moments of practice to contribute to? We call this pursuing a noble goal. It's about saying, what is it that I really want to add to the world? And how do I show up in these days and in these moments in line with that bigger picture? My noble goal is to inspire compassion and wisdom. And so I think about these day-to-day choices that I have and these moment-to-moment choices that I have. And I think, how do I want to practice feeling that inspiration, inspiring others? How do I want to show up as somebody who's inviting that wisdom instead of telling or directing? And even here in this video, what I'm hoping is that the questions that I'm asking you and the way I'm asking you these questions will inspire in you some compassionate wisdom for you to think about who you want to be and how you want to show up. And then inviting you to practice being that person, practice engaging in that way. So key points in this video: emotional intelligence is something you can practice. You can practice it in the moments by pausing and noticing your feelings. You can practice it in the days by being intentional about how you want to show up. And you can practice it in your lifetime by asking yourself who you really want to be. Now it's your turn. How are you going to practice emotional intelligence?
All right. So now we are going to move you guys into some breakout rooms.
I will copy and paste your three questions into the chat.
Yes, and that's the goal here, is what we'd like you to do as you see those questions as a group. There'll be rooms where it'll be like 3 of you in each room. Just discuss the questions. Don't feel pressure like you got to get answers to all of them and there'll be a quiz afterwards, because that's not what we're going to do. But what we'd like you to do is to process from what you saw in the video, what you've heard so far, and then we'll move into when we come back together. And I'm going to give you guys about, I'm going to say maybe about 7 minutes or so, and just discuss. And again, don't feel the pressure that you've got to get them all answered and all that other good stuff, but just find something that you think was meaningful, something that you could run with. Maybe it's something you can apply in your career or in your aspirations in school, or maybe it's a family thing. That's sort of the motivation. So I'm going to put you in rooms. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes, and we will come back if I can get my tool to work. Why isn't it working, Jeff?
I don't know.
Well, let me try this. All right. Okay, I think at 1, 2, 3. Let's try it. For some reason, guys, it's asking me to do all of this in a way I don't want to do it. So bear with me.
Eric, I can do it here.
If you want to do that, Jeff, because some reason my controls are not allowing me to do it the way I need to. I think we need 13 rooms. Is that working for you?
It'll be around 10 rooms, 3 to 4. So
That works.
all right.
See you guys in a bit. So, Jeff, what did I miss with my tool?
I don't know. Well, we got 2 people still in here.
All right.
There they go. The link that was in the Logan.
They may be away from. And Garrison, I think we can get him into a room, can't we, Jeff?
No, I'm afraid not. Well, wait a minute. Okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, there you go. I figured out. I'm so smart. For whatever reason, the link that you sent in the calendar invite said that you were in another meeting, which was this meeting, I guess. I don't know. So I just went into our Zoom and logged in. You were already logged in, but I think because I'm the one that set it up, I'm more important than you.
Well, that may very well be true, but that's weird. That's
So no,
weird.
because it let me do it really simple. So
All right.
I've got a timer.
What about with the and I've got it timed as well. I've got the breakout rooms. Usually it allows me to say I want 13 rooms and assign automatically.
Yeah, that's what I had.
But it wouldn't let me move from the one. I kept clicking the button and it wouldn't do anything.
That I don't know, but yeah, it worked perfectly here, and then it'll tell you, you said you wanted 4 people in the room. I just kept clicking it until I got to 3 to 4 people.
That's weird. Weird. All right. Well, anyway.
Tell me when there's like a minute, and I'll send them a minute left.
All right.
I talked to Mahmood or send him. I'm going to send him the quiz, and he's going to handle it the same way. I'll send him that tomorrow after we're done.
All right. Perfect. So how do you like my my background, dude?
I like that.
That's at the Das Arboretum in their Japanese garden.
for whatever reason, there's certain HPs, which is what I've got, that won't let you do a background without a green screen.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, there's just something in the processor.
It's funny.
If I do it, well, maybe it'll let me do it now. I don't know. This is different.
Hey, I see your background.
Oh, it'll let me do it now. It wouldn't let me do it before. There must have been an upgrade to Zoom because I didn't upgrade my computer.
Interesting.
That is an interesting thing. That is a bridge over a creek for a canal
Interesting.
in Maryland, part of the old Erie Canal, whatever it was.
Okay.
Huh. I'm glad I tried, because before it would look like one of those mess ups with the weather one.
Yeah. And I forgot that we are recording as well. So with that, we get a little bit of the behind the scenes conversation as we go.
We have just dispelled to these people that we are perfect.
There you go. So as I mentioned, you'll want to go ahead and give some insights to the group via chat, if you like, or if you have something that you might want to verbalize via unmuting yourself, you can do that too, whichever you're most comfortable with. And then Jeff, as always, if I can get you to maybe share with the group as well.
An insight was the idea of EQ being something that could be practiced and improved upon.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, one of the things we talked about in the breakout room, and I'll confess, I had some connectivity issues, so I missed the last 5 or 10 minutes of the video. But having made enough mistakes, I understand what emotional intelligence is. One of the things I've seen is in my work, and I was talking about this in the breakout room, I learned that a coworker had incredibly low emotional intelligence, because being a machinist, anytime somebody made a mistake he had to fix, it was about attacking the person and not the problem, which is emotionally as immature as it gets. Whereas I learned pretty quick with my boss to not even bother saying sorry for making mistakes, because he didn't care about that. He was so emotionally intelligent. If you made a mistake and came to him with the mistake, and then when you finished that first sentence with the solution, he'd be like, okay, take care of it. He skipped several parts of the emotional journey and just right to the solution. And sometimes, I'd need help solving an issue. Other times I'd make a mistake and I'd have a solution all ready to go and I'd fix it and he'd never even know about it. And that's the kind of thing he loved.
Wow. Wow. That's really, really powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
And Jeff, you want to read from the chat, and then maybe we'll have another person if they want to go verbal?
I found the idea of having the presence of mind to stop and consider your emotions while in the moment to be quite thought-provoking. Take the time to think more and respond thoughtfully. My dad made me memorize this quote, and I think it relates really well. I'm convinced that life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. Chuck Swindoll.
Yeah.
By applying EQ to our personal lives, we create a positive change, not just for ourselves, but also for the people around us. We all make mistakes with handling our emotions. As long as we learn from those mistakes, then making the mistake should not be looked at as a negative thing. It's a room for growth. I like that one.
Awesome.
I would have been promoted at the job sooner if I started working on my emotions earlier.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. So with that is, if anybody else would like to maybe go verbal, and then we'll keep moving through the session. Anybody else want to share? verbally?
Eric, I'll share. In my group, we were talking about like with EQ, with our emotions. I gave an example such as myself. I actually I do suffer from high function anxiety, and that's the biggest thing in my life is I used to constantly worry about like the future, like what can I would worry like where am I going to be 5-10 years down the road, and it would just completely drain my day. Like I just felt emotionally drained by the end of the day and felt like I couldn't even stand on my feet when I got home. So what I actually learned when I was going through therapy was that I needed to learn how to focus on controlling the things that I can control and letting go of the things I can't. So one of the biggest things was it's like, okay, focus on my day-to-day operations, focus on the time that I wake up from the time that I go to bed. What can I physically change in my personal life? What can I do to better myself? Then that was like a decision to go to school right now, like get my bachelor's degree. Like you have time on your hands, you have hobbies that could fill up the rest of the void, things of that sort. That really helped me out. And like you talked about earlier, talking about like emotions like fear, what is causing my fear, what is causing my anxiety, what is causing me to be happy, be sad. Those are things that I started using as tools for my day-to-day operations. So things that would make me fearful, things that would make me happy or sad, I used to focus on those areas and start delegating those to where they need to be applied and where can I better myself in those areas, to better my anxiety and get myself through. And one of the guys in my group was asking like, did that work? Is it working well for you now? And I said, yeah, ever since I've learned to let go of things that I can't control and learn to focus on things I can control right now, it's been so much more of a simple life to just say that.
Oh man, Cale, if I had the ability to carve out a video of what you just said, that would be an awesome advertisement for what we're doing, our mission. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. That's just great.
I got one more.
All right, go ahead.
Applying EQ to my life has helped prevent me doing something out of anger. Knowing how you feel is the first step to see how someone else is feeling. And that last sentence is important because when we talk about, knowing your emotions, it's just as important to learn how to sense those or recognize those emotions in other people so that you can help them with maybe a problem they're going through, or know that maybe this isn't a good time to talk to them about this issue because just whatever the situation is, the more you can feel that or sense it or understand it in other people, the better things will go for you.
And there's one other thing I'll add to that as well, guys. What's implied in a lot of this, and you probably saw it in the video, is this idea of like, we are constantly working on this. It's a constant process. It is not that tomorrow you're going to be able to look at your boss and know exactly what she or he or that person is feeling. But as you get more in tune with your own emotions and understand what they mean and what they're messaging you, yes, what Jeff said is so right. You'll get to a place where you'll be able to sense and understand more of what others, but it requires time and work. So with that, we're going to keep moving here, and we're going to talk about now this idea of success. So if you don't mind, and we'll just have a few of you guys I can get my slide deck to go. There we go. To think about the idea of success. And each of us on here tonight have our own definition of what success is. And there's some of us that have our definitions of success from the society that we live in, or our families. Maybe we grew up in a home where our mom and dad said, you know what, to be successful, you need to make a lot of money. Some people maybe grew up in a home where mom and dad said, success is just enjoying and embracing life and family. So the important thing here is that you're not allowing yourself to be defined by outside forces as much as you define it for what's best for you. And it should be different. inside of our model, one of the things that we measure in our assessments specifically is something that we call success factors. And Jeff, we're going to talk a little bit about that now with you and I and some of our experiences with success factors. There's 4 of them. It's effectiveness, relationships, well-being, and quality of life. We picked those 4, or our preferred partner 6 Seconds picked those 4, because those are typically the areas where, from a predictive perspective, we can gain good data around how somebody is doing. When you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? How effective are you in a given day, in a given week, month? How are you doing with your relationships? How successful are you with that? Your well-being, oh my gosh, how you're doing in physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. And then quality of life. When you look at your life, what's your view of it? How do you feel about it? Is it going the way that you want? Are you pleased with it? So Jeff, when we look at those 4, what are some of the impacts do you think they have on us as we're learning how to practice emotional intelligence?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to consider is these are your success factors. It's what you want to have going on in your life. If your quality of life is, I want to have a tiny house out in the woods, and that will make you extremely happy, that's just as important as somebody that wants a 4,000-foot house in the city. So it's what you want, not from everything else. So success factors are very important because we want to be effective. As an example, we want to make a difference, and that difference could be, I want to be effective in my home life. How are you being if you're a parent? Are you being effective as a parent? It could be effective as a worker. And am I accomplishing what I want at work? It might be effective as, I want to learn to play the bagpipes. And am I learning to play the bagpipes? Somebody else might not think that was a success factor if you learn, but it's what you're effective at. And it's the same thing for relationships. It's not about how many friends you have. It's about the quality of that relationship. Are the people that your close circle, are they people that can count on you? And are they people that you can count on? Those relationships have meaning. They're not just a casual, wave as you pass in the hall. And then your health, obviously, your health is important. Your physical health to, if you're always dealing with health issues, you're not going to be as effective. And what's the last one, Eric?
Yeah, the quality of life. But I was going to mention, Jeff, you as you were talking, one of the things that we have found, everyone, is when people look at their scores and how well their emotional intelligence shows up in these 4 success factors, is that invariably some are going to be higher than others, and on and on. But what we ask people to think about it, and this is a little bit more difficult in this setting, but think about, of those 4, which one would you say is you're really strong at, right? And once you have that in your mind, ask yourself, how could that one help you be stronger in another? Let me give you an example. So let's say from a work perspective, you're really, really effective. You get things done, your projects are in on time, you're there for the meetings on time, you're continually adding and contributing, you're getting it done, right? But when you look at your well-being, you're not finding that you have time for exercise. Maybe your diet is not what you want it to be. And this is, again, about curiosity. It's not judgment, right? It's nobody gets a bad award or gets kicked out or canceled. What if you took that effectiveness strength and start applying it to the well-being that's a little bit more vulnerable and weaker to help it grow? See, these things are at your disposal. And yeah, we're kind of brainstorming it with you tonight in a session, but if you take some time out on your own, like an appointment with yourself, and start evaluating, well, man, I am very effective at work. I could be effective in helping change my diet. I could be effective in starting that exercise program, or maybe, improving my brain health. That's really a big part of what we're talking about here. Now, another thing is, I'm thinking I went too far. It's terrible. Want to talk about it from the perspective of what and how EQ plays part in this. So Jeff, this is one that's always been an eye-opener to me, is that first one. EQ has twice the power of IQ to predict performance. So I know typically, when we go in to apply for jobs, or when we go for a promotion or whatever, everybody's got I said everybody, but many times the companies will focus in on how good are you at task and getting things done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about EQ that makes it so powerful in your mind?
For a while, I lived an example. I started work for a small, very local service company. And over the years, we grew into a very large regional company in 7 states. And one of the things I think really helped us with our growth is the president of our company, of that company, was always interested in the culture of the company. And so, he did the DISC profiles and the Myers-Briggs and different things like that. And then he got introduced to emotional intelligence. And it kind of changed the shift in how we hired people. We started looking at people for how emotional intelligence they are, how well-rounded they were, not necessarily their job skills. Job skills are usually easier to, well, I would say always are easier to teach than the emotional intelligence part of it. And when we started looking at people with that in mind, it really made a difference in our customer retention, our growth, happiness of the employees, just different things like that. And in this case, it just, doing that made an extremely big change in how our company operated.
Well, there's another thing for you guys that, this may even be a big duh moment for you, right? You might say, of course, this makes total sense, Eric, because we've all interacted with people who were very, very smart, but maybe didn't have a lot of empathy, or they weren't very able to hold on and do well at communicating what it is they believed or what it is they thought.
Sheldon from Big Bang.
All right. I'm not familiar with Big Bang, but I'll take your word for it, Jeff.
I see a couple of smiles.
All right. All right. So what I want to do, this is a really brief video that I want you to take a look at. This is Daniel Goldman, the gentleman I mentioned earlier. It's a great interview that he did with Oprah some years ago. And then we're going to talk about it as a part of closing tonight, around some of the things he's saying, and then also some of the things that Jeff and I were talking about as it relates to success. So take a look with me.
It's interesting because you share in the book why a lot of people with 160 IQs are working for people with 100 IQs or less. So the smartest people are often not the best leaders and certainly not the best bosses.
I once was giving a talk to a room full of CEOs, and I said, how many of you were valedictorians, like smartest kid in your class? 200-300 people, 3 hands went up in the room. It's not related. This is the big, I think, myth that the book shatters, and it was an eye-opener for me, is that your IQ, your academic abilities, your cognitive brilliance is not what's going to matter the most. Actually, that's kind of threshold, gets you in the game. Yeah. But once you're in the game, it's how you get along with other people, how you handle yourself.
So your IQ can tell you what you can do, but it can't tell you how to do it.
And it's not going to tell you if you're going to emerge as a team leader, as a star. It's not going to tell you how good a parent you're going to be, how good a spouse you're going to be.
What is the difference? Because we do a lot of talk on this show about the spirit within things. So what's the difference between emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence? Because the essence of emotional intelligence is a sense of self-awareness,
Sure.
a sense of empathy and compassion.
Sure.
And to me, that's what your spirituality is also about.
I totally agree. I think they're on the same spectrum. But in this, when I talk about it to educators, to business people.
Because you're a scientist first.
And I'm a science journalist. I talk about the science, and I talk about self-awareness in an everyday way. Do you know what you're feeling? Why are you feeling it? Do you know how to manage those feelings? Do you know what someone else is feeling? Can you put it together and have a good interaction and good relationship? That's every day. Take all of those up a notch. Self-awareness, that's deep reflection. It's journaling, it's meditation, it's tuning into the spiritual within you.
Yeah, self-awareness is having enough time or making enough time to spend alone so that you can be with yourself and have a sense of awareness.
And you have to make time to have that reflection. Once you have that, then you can handle yourself in a way that aligns with your own sense of purpose, meaning,
and values.
And values,
and
exactly.
values. Hi, YouTubers. It's interesting because you.
All right, so what we're going to do now, instead of putting you guys in breakout rooms for this one, I want you guys to consider these questions, and we'll go with them one at a time, and you can feel free to type your thoughts in the chat. But when you think about how have your emotions impacted your success in the past? So whether you want to think about an event, or if you want to think about just your journey in general, think about some of the emotions that you experienced along the way. Did they help your journey and success, or were they a hindrance? And your reflection around that. So that's the first question we'll tackle here. If you want to unmute yourself because you're thinking, hey, I got something, please feel free to do that. And then Jeff, once again, yes, go ahead. Are you there?
The question that, yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I know when I hear this question, I work for a company that, I started from the bottom, and I was worried about a project that was given to me. So I felt like, oh man, they're gonna see, like I had to make sure things, like I had a lot on my plate. So I did it. And after all those fears of planning, what I found out from planning, months and months of planning, was things don't happen the way they happen. They just happen. I learned that is, you can plan for so many months, and there's always going to be mistakes, and you're just going to have to deal with it, and it just happens. And how I learned to present myself was to stay calm. Even though I was not calm doing these projects, I was very stressed out and about to lose my business. But other than that, I saw me grow. So I noticed he gave me projects a little more, like he'd started with small projects and end up being like bigger projects now. And I was kind of, so that was a way of my success, is I started small, and then I didn't realize they were grooming me. So, those are my 2 cents.
Nice, nice. And I will tell you guys, Jeff and I are living proof that we're going to make mistakes, because I forgot to turn off the record while you guys were in the breakout room. But fear not, we didn't say anything that would cause us to get in trouble with the FBI, FTC, FCC, and all of the above. So, Jeff, you got any in the chat that you'd want to share?
Yeah, lost out on a promotion to a person that was less qualified because he was able to get along with the boss, where I was butting heads with my boss.
Ah, wow. Yeah. All right.
In making change at work, having EQ has helped me implement the change. Being aware of my emotions to see how I was delivering the message and how others interpret the message. Make sure I had a positive attitude when trying to communicate change.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Awesome. That's awesome. So as we move through these questions, how could your EQ help you be more successful in your personal and professional life? Even if you just had limited exposure to it, if tonight's your first, some of the things that you've heard, maybe from the video or from some of the other slides, what's something you think, how do you think it could help you be more successful, whether it's personal or professional? And again, if you want to unmute yourself, feel free to do that. If you want to go verbal, or again, you can type in the chat. We'll read that off too.
I could share something. It's a little bit easier than typing in the chat.
All right.
I had an experience at work where we had a very high profile client coming in, and it was a project that kind of went sideways in the 11th hour, and everyone was in panic mode, and a lot of people were pointing fingers and blaming other people, and kind of run around like headless chickens. And I basically just took my laptop, went in, sat down, and worked on the issue till about 2:30 in the morning. So when the client came in at 5 a.m. the next day, the issue was resolved. And I pretty much just had to shut off all of the stress and the fear and the anxiety and just work through the issue, put in my headphones, just ignored all the background noise and just fixed it. And that got me a promotion at work about 3 months later.
I was going to say, that doesn't surprise me. Do you go by Sam or Samuel?
I generally go by Sam. Yeah.
Okay, so Sam, that doesn't surprise me. And you wouldn't know this only because we haven't exposed you guys to our assessments and that kind of thing. But there is a competency inside of our emotional intelligence model called consequential thinking, which is ultimately weighing the cost and benefit of the choices you make. And the idea that you just described there, or that story, is a great illustration of being able to go, okay, I'm going to weigh this. What am I going to do? And that's great. Thanks for sharing. Jeff, anything from the chat?
Yeah, we got a few more. Let my shyness, extreme conflict avoidance get me pushed around personally and professionally. Emotions have affected any movement due to negativity lately. Using EQ to read others to give the responses needed. Empathy and being able to connect with people is the reason I was promoted over other qualified people. During the interview, I spoke about my goals with the company and was told I will have no problem continuing to move up in the future. My boss actually used a lot of EQ after my mom had 2 strokes, and I returned the favor when his dad died suddenly. Very good.
Oh, wow.
EQ has helped me take more time when giving a response. I think about how I'm feeling and how that may influence my response. Those are great.
Oh my gosh, just awesome, awesome. So the last question, what's one insight you gained from the video? And I would qualify this one as, what's one insight that you might be able to put into practice or grow going forward as it relates to your success? So any insights from the video from Daniel Goldman and Oprah? And again, feel free to type in the chat, or you can go verbal if you like, if you want to unmute. All right, Jeff, we have anything in the chat?
I think this was from the last question, but I'll read it. EQ could help have a better relationship with my children by waiting to respond rather than react. Often it is much easier to react to their problem rather than listen and respond.
Well, I got to tell you, as a parent, and Jeff, I know you're a parent too, putting that into practice will, that's a good one. That's a
and
good
a grandparent, yeah. You don't have to be the smartest person in life to make big impacts in life. You know, that goes back to the first video of Josh, when he was talking about Noble Goal. Noble Goal is about making an impact in others' lives.
Yeah. So everyone, as we're getting to the close of tonight's session, and I don't know about you, Jeff, but I feel like this time has just flown by.
It doesn't have anything to do with us liking to hear our voices, does it?
No, I actually, I cringe for my own. But so this is just a statement that we carry through our work. And I would throw out to you guys, it's something, if you can remember this in every situation, positive, negative, good people, bad people, if you can remember this, it'll set you up to make it into making a better decision and a better interaction. Because this is truth. Emotions drive people. So Jeff, as the work we do on our podcast, as well in the work that we do with clients, any takeaways from this one that you'd want to share? And then I've got one to share, and we'll let these folks get on with their night.
Yeah, it's just, what are you going to let drive you? Are you going to let what others think and want, or are you going to let what you feel is important drive you? And the emotions are a strong tool to help you figure out what is important to you.
And I will close out with a story. One of our clients was in a session we were doing on something called emotional literacy, which, by the way, we're going to touch on that tomorrow evening. And in that session, we discussed things like our emotions are those transmitters, the neurotransmitters, messaging us, almost like a message from me, to get our attention, to pay attention, to focus on some things. And at the end of this session, one of the participants said, hey, I wonder, could you just listen to my story? I find myself that I got nothing left for my family when I get off from work. And it's just, I'm exhausted. And at the time I thought, wow, okay, maybe she's talking about it from the perspective of, I've put all my energy into work and I just don't have anything left to give to my family. But it wasn't that. She went on to say that she just dreaded going home, and it was this great weight on her because her mom lived with her husband and her 2 kids. And it was just exhausting to deal and to interact with her. So I asked her, I said, hey, we're in this session about emotional literacy. What are some of the emotions you felt as you drive home every night? And this had been happening for a while. And she said things like frustration, anger, disappointment, that kind of thing. And I said, if you don't mind, I'm just going to pick one of those that you mentioned. You said frustration. Let's just pause for a minute and think, what do you think your frustration was telling you? And it felt like it was a long period of time, but it was probably maybe 15, 20 seconds. And she says, I don't want my mom to live with us. At that point, I said to her, I'm not here to solve your problems, to tell you what you should do or what you shouldn't do. But there's one thing that's very clear. Your emotions just communicated to you about something that you need to pay attention to. And it was one of the most awesome experiences for her, because it was like all of a sudden she could see the problem as it truly is, versus it being, I just don't feel like going home. I don't like it. It's a drag. I dread it. She could now see a place where she could go to solve it. Maybe she needs to cope better with her emotions. Maybe her mom does need to move out, but at least she could identify what the problem was. And that's what our emotions can and we should embrace to do. All right, so Jeff, I think we've come to a close. I'll leave this here and let you guys, if you have any questions for us about the first session, that we could add some clarity. Otherwise, we will let you get on with your evening and hopefully to see you tomorrow. Any questions, anything that we could answer for you? And you can put it in the chat if you feel more comfortable than going verbal.
Boy, we're good, Eric.
I'd like to think so, Jeff.
Nope,
But-
great talk.
All right,
Thanks,
that
Garrison.
settles it. Garrison, all right, mic drop. All right, everyone, we really appreciate your time. Mahmood, I think we're good to go for tonight. If there's anything else, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you
Take care,
very much.
guys.
We'll see you tomorrow. Yes.
All right, guys, everyone, thank you. Have a good night. We enjoy it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.